Well, good evening and welcome to our only meeting for the month of December. We're glad you could make it out on this not so pleasant evening, but we are glad to have you. We'd like to begin each meeting with a moment of silence, and we'd ask you to remember in your thoughts and prayers a young student from Blue Ridge Elementary who was injured in an automobile accident Saturday, I believe.
Yes.
But just keep him and his family in your prayers. If you care to join, we welcome you to. Thank you. If you will stand, I will lead us in the pledge. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
School highlights. Mr. Steve Moore of County Adult Education. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Come join us.
It's been a while since I've been in this position, so you'll have to forgive me. First of all, I want to say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share very briefly, as I told Dr. Thorson, that I will keep my moments and thoughts together really quickly. You have before you a brochure, which is just a short highlight, which we're beginning to think about how we're rebranding adult ed for Oconee County, and think about how we're moving forward and expanding adult ed in a lot of different ways. I guess I want to say this is kind of a full circle for me in a lot of ways. Whenever I first got into education, I was sitting there as an administrative assistant helping young people, thinking about where they were, thinking about the choices that they were making, and trying to guide them in a different path. And I remember a student who was sitting in ISS one day, and I happened to be in there, and I'm working with them, trying to get them to focus on their work. And the student said, "Doggone it, Mr. Moore, would you quit being so positive? I'm so tired of you always being happy." And I said, "I appreciate that, young man. Thank you very much." And he said, "See there?" He says, "That makes me so mad." And I said, "Thank you very much." And it was, funny. Well, just this past week, at one of our night programs, a young man by the name of Lee Whitehead happened to be from Seneca, from one of my first start days, and he's sitting there working, and he comes in, he's having a bad day, and I said, "Lee, what's going on? And I know you've had a great day." And he said, "Oh, it's been rough." And I said, "Well, you've had a good day, though." And he said, "Been on a forklift all day, Mr. Moore. It's been a rough day." And I said, "Anytime you get a chance to go to work, it's a good day, isn't it?" He says, "Dadgummit, Mr. Moore, you're still positive." And I thought to myself, oh no, was Lee the one in ISS whenever I did that day? Well, I guess the whole thing comes back to full circle. I never thought I would have the opportunity to be right back in adult ed. And never, that dream of just helping people has always been there. So being in adult ed gives me a chance to work with many different people, from people who are seeking opportunities for jobs, whether through Borg Warner, Schneider, or any of those places, to working with VR, and all of those persons who are associated with VR and the clients that they have, to people who are just coming back because for some odd reason they just had a tough time going through high school. And then on the flip side of that, I still get to work with high schools, because currently, as I've been going around to each of the high schools and meeting with them, I said to them, think of adult ed as almost a graduation coach for you. I said, when you're having young people who are thinking about what they're going to do next, whether they want to quit school or what their next path in life is, let me come and meet them. So I go, and I've had the opportunity to meet with people, with young people and their parents at the school, and the first question I ask them is, why do you think adult ed makes the right choice for where you are? And they're like, well, it's just going to be easier. And I said, oh, interesting. I said, for most people, you have to understand that adult ed is not easier. It actually takes a little longer. So specifically, I want to say a shout out to Walhalla High School. We've actually been able to, in the past 3 weeks, keep 3 young people from making a choice of quitting school to actually staying in school. And I want to say special thanks to Aaron Phillips, Jennifer Crawford, Cindy Burnett for giving me the chance to come and meet with the students and their parents to keep them in school instead of coming to adult ed. That sounds strange, doesn't it? But I think that's what my job is supposed to be, not encouraging young people to quit school but finish school, so that maybe one day adult ed doesn't have to become a part of what we know is almost the everyday norm. Again, strange, but I want to pose that to you as you think and move forward of how do we think of adult ed changing and evolving? Not just getting people with high school credentials, but maybe giving them work-ready credentials instead of having to focus on high school diplomas. That's the job of high schools. So I want to continue my work in helping young people to achieve their diplomas. We have a couple of pictures I wanted to share with you really quick, just because I want to show you just opportunities. So you'll know Mike Pearson is back with us in the district. He is such a neat person, and his working with me, he has actually been able to challenge me in some of the things, but as I've asked him to think about how do we get young people to stay in school, looking at what he did at the Career Center and what he has been able to do and his focus since then. So Mike is with us. A couple of other pictures really quick. Amanda Holder serving as our career navigator. Kelly Holloman right there working with our ESL students. And of course, Mr. Jeremiah Cummings in the afternoon working all 4 subject levels, math, science, social studies, and English. Amazing. And this right here, I want to focus really quick, just celebrate. The young lady that's in the middle right there, I will not share her name, but that's one of our English language learners, and she actually had the opportunity to go to Blue Ridge and actually read to the students there because of her work at Adult Ed over the past year. So she's been working hard, diligently, and she took her skill, newfound skill, expanding that there to be able to read in English. And we want to thank Blue Ridge Elementary for that. And of course, there's another picture of her. I want to say thank you to Shannon Gibson for helping me to relook at our website, trying to change and get some information on there. I always welcome feedback. But this picture right here I want to put to you really fast, adult education on Coney. Because the phrase, and I've always loved phrases ever since I've been in the business here, says we are the bridge. So anytime you're sharing adult ed in Oconee County, remind people that we are the bridge from where they were to the successful future that they want. Please make sure that you take time to read that brochure. Take time to go to our website, which is constantly being updated. So if you see something, please let us know so that we can change it. And I want to end tonight with a commercial for you that we hope to be able to get out live. Shannon, if you don't mind. I hope it works.
It did earlier.
You didn't take it. Not knowing where we are at the moment because I have nothing to build on. This is so brand new to me. I encourage you to please come and take the time to visit Oconee Adult Education. You can't make a decision about anything going on unless you've been there. I say thank you to the district office, the leadership team. They have been there very much so this year. In fact, my staff has been shocked because I told them, I said, by Thanksgiving, we will have been visited by the DO 4 times. And they looked at me and said, you're buying everybody's supper. And I said, you're on. Well, if I've got my numbers right, you've been there at least 8 times. And I told them I wouldn't make them pay me anything. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to be a part of adult education. Thank you for allowing me just to find a way to continue to help people in Oconee County. Come be a part of us because you are. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Celebrating our successes, Dr. Thorpe.
Well, we're going to start and let Mr. Stamey, Don Estep, Stamey, Stancil, Cooley, Stephens, Stamey, report our audit findings, and Ms. Moore is happy about that success. So Don, come share that with us.
You all have a copy of the PowerPoint that we proposed and you can follow along.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to appreciate the assistance we received from the staff this year. They were very helpful. I let Brian do most of the work. I've got him trained now to where he's, that's why I've got him here tonight, because he did so much of the work. But this third year, I believe, working on the audit, so he's getting very familiar with it. Once again, this year, we issued the best opinion that we can give you, which is what we call an unmodified opinion. If we find enough serious problems, we can modify that opinion. Or if we find that you didn't do something in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, we can modify our opinion. But this year, there was no modification, so it was unmodified. We also issued 2 reports that are related to the single audit that we do, that the federal government requires us to do. And both of those were unmodified with no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies. So from that standpoint, the audit went really well, and we didn't find any, major problems. The first slide that you've got there on your screens is discussing net position. And I guess, Dr. Sloan, since you're our new member, I'd just like to explain just a little bit about the difference in the way we used to do these statements and the way we have to do them now. In the old days, you didn't show property and equipment, buildings. You didn't show that as an asset, and you didn't show bonds payable as a liability. The net position, however, takes all that into consideration. You depreciate the assets over a period of time, and you show the bonds payable and decrease those as you make bond payments. And there's some other items involved in that computation also, but the net position is the total of everything added together. And you can see our net position this year is a deficit of $54 million. You say, that sounds horrible. Most of that has been caused by 2 new accounting pronouncements that we had to enact that really reflect the share that the district has in the pension liability for the state and in the other employee benefits. This is the first year we've had to do the other employee benefits. So that's the main reason why you see that figure change from 44 million positive to 54 million deficit. And if you look at the very bottom of that slide, you see that it's changed by approximately $115 million just because of that new accounting pronouncement. It went negative $115 million worth compared to the previous year. The business type activities, the only business type activity we have is the food service fund. So you'll see a slight change in it from year to year. It doesn't vary a whole lot, but once again, it was impacted by this new accounting pronouncement also. So that's why you're seeing it look like we're way in the hole. It's because they're making us add all these additional liabilities, and I've got a couple of slides later on that's going to illustrate that even clearer than this one. The next slide is really just your general fund. That's what everybody's usually interested in. And this is not using the new method where you include, property and equipment. You don't include bonds payable. You just expense everything as you pay for it. And you do have accruals of accounts payable, and you do have some receivables. But this is comparing the budget to actual on this slide. You'll notice our local source revenue was up over what we had budgeted, about $887,000. The state revenue was up about $1.4 million over what was budgeted. The total revenues went up about $2.3 million, not up, but they were that much more than what we had budgeted for. If you look at the next slide, you'll see the expenditure side. The expenditures for the budget, the instruction, it was about what we budgeted. A little bit less, 196 less than what we budgeted. And then the support services, we spent about $687,000 more than what we had budgeted. So we get to the very bottom, you'll see that our actual expenditures are more by $483,000. The net change in fund balance for the year actually went up by $1.9 million, and that's really reflecting the transfers that the general fund gets from EIA funds and special revenue funds. They transfer money into the general fund to help pay salaries and indirect costs. On your next slide, that's comparing 18 to 17's figures. You'll see that our revenues went up on local sources about $2.7 million. State monies went up $1.7 million. So your total went up about $4.5 million over what we actually received the year before. And then the next one is your expenditure side. We spent $2.5 more million in instruction, $1.8 million more in supporting services, and total expenditures are up $4.4 million. The next one is the accounting and reporting for pensions, which we've been doing this for several years now. But if you look at the, it's consisting of three different items: the deferred pension charges, the pension liability, and the deferred pension credits. That doesn't mean a whole lot to y'all, but the net effect is what you really need to look at. It was $123 million that it reduced our net position at the end of this year. Last year it was $120 million, so it's changed another $3 million to make us more in deficit than what we were. And the business type is the food service part, which didn't really change a whole lot. But that's what that one pronouncement, that's the effect it's having on our net position. And then if you look at the next one, that's the other benefits like health insurance that retirees get under the state plan. And we didn't have this in last year's statements because this is the first year we had to implement this. So if you look at the prior period adjustment, the next to last line, we had to make an adjustment for the beginning of the year, and that's how much it reduced our net position. Was $110 million in the general fund and $1.8 million in the food service fund. The figure up above that, the net effect at the end of this year, shows you where we stand, at the end of 6/30/18. We're showing $112 million negative impact on our net position in the general fund and $1.7 million in the food service fund. So you can see what a huge impact these two accounting pronouncements have made that makes it look like our net position is in a deficit situation. When in the old days, if we were doing a statement for net position, it would have been a big positive figure, because you wouldn't have had those two big negative numbers in there. And the reason behind these pronouncements is they want every governmental entity in the state to reflect their share of this liability that's being created by the state pension plan and the health insurance for retirees. And they want everybody to show their share, so you're going to see a lot of deficits all around the state, because nobody can build up that kind of a net position. I would be very surprised if any school districts have a positive net position anymore because of this. And it affects cities and counties too. everybody in South Carolina that participates in those plans could have the same impact. And it's not just South Carolina, it's all over the nation. They're doing, these are nationwide accounting pronouncements. So it's having the impact all across the nation. But the bonding companies they know how to take it into consideration. That's why you can still issue bonds, even though it looks like we're showing a big deficit in our net position. It's because they understand these accounting pronouncements. They understand where all these numbers are coming from, and they kind of take them into consideration when they decide to issue bonds or not. And that's basically all I've got to say about everything, unless y'all got some questions you would like to ask.
I've got one question.
Okay.
How do you turn this around and keep from getting further and further, getting a larger deficit every year?
Well, they've upped that percentage that employees are paying in, and they're upping the amount that the employers are putting in, and they've got, what, about a 5 or 6 year schedule of increases?
Yeah, through 2022.
Supposedly, that's gonna help get a handle on this thing to where we won't be showing such a negative net position. Plus, Michael was telling me the investment performance had been a lot better for the fund.
That was before the last few months. I think the stock market's
Last
probably
week,
taken.
before last week anyway, we were doing a lot better with the investment performance, and that impacts the negative position also. Is how good do they invest all those funds? If they do a good job, then it can reduce that deficit that we're in. But this is built up over a long period of time, and now they're trying to get a handle on it and try to, you know, if what those numbers mean to us is really, if the state was to go to fund, that would be our share of the liability that nobody could pay. So it's really almost meaningless, you know, because nobody could afford to pay this type of money that they're saying this is our portion of it. So it's kind of a crazy situation, really. But anyway, we have to play by rules somebody else sets.
So what you're saying is, if it folded, the whole state would be bankrupt.
That's right.
Any other questions, Mr. Easton? Don, thank you very much. And I think I mentioned to most of you, we have deleted the recognition of the Central High School girls
Yeah,
cross country. We'll do it.
since school was not in session, we didn't feel comfortable having students come, so they'll come sometime January, February. So,
Okay, approval of agenda, that's tonight's agenda. Of course, with the deletion of the recognition of the cross-country team. Can I get a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda for the December 10th, 2018 regular board meeting agenda with the deletion of the recognition of the Seneca High School girls cross-country team.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Public comment, Ms. Gibson, do we have anyone to, none? Okay, thank you.
you want some? Okay. Just make sure.
Anyone?
No. it's-
Approval of minutes for the November 12th work session that you have received. Anyone see any corrections?
No, sir.
Motion to
Well, yeah. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the November 12th, 2018 work session minutes.
I second that.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, discussion items, disposal of school district property. Dr. Thorson.
Yes, and this may seem pretty minor, but I just want to go on the record so nobody can accuse us of wrongdoing. But we have a district procurement code, and to get rid of school district property, we have to go through certain steps to dispose of things appropriately. And if we ever do something differently than what our code calls for, it would require a vote from the school board. And with the iPad that Mr. Inabinet used during the last 4 years on the board. It's kind of obsolete technology these days. When you use a piece of technology for 4 years, it's, you know, it may still work a little bit, but it's not. So the bottom line is there's not a lot of value in the iPad that Mr. Inabinant used. And he did have some personal things on that iPad, so I would like to recommend that you allow a deviation from our procurement code and allow us to just let Mr. Inabinant keep the iPad that he was using for the last 4 years. We've already bought a new iPad for Dr. Sloan, so she has that, and so that's just a recommendation to let Mr. Inabinant have the iPad that he was using. And if you're open to it, you can take action on that later in the meeting. But
Not in the action.
it's just, again, a pretty insignificant thing, but putting it on the record just keeps it out in the open, which is what we need to do. We're a public entity, so I want the public to have confidence that we're doing the right things.
Any questions or comments?
No, I personally worked on his computer. He needs to keep it. Because I know what we're gonna do with it if we keep it.
Salvage pile. Okay, we will take action on that further on down the agenda. Policy JLCD, assisting students with medications. Mr. Hanby.
Yes, we share this policy. I just wanted to kind of clean it up after talking with some of the elementary school principals. We actually had a situation where a kindergarten student had their medication in their backpack and kept it. You know, kindergarten students, they get off the bus or out of the car, they don't remember to go to the office and drop off medicine and that. They go to their hallway or to breakfast or whatever. And so we wanted to kind of revisit the policy and put it. It happens most of the time, but to close this loophole for a few folks at the elementary level to have the parents be required to drop off the medication in its normal container rather than sending it with, the policy kind of says send it with your child and they go directly to the office. Well, if they ride a bus, or it's just a little bit dangerous for us to do that. So we wanted to kind of clean that up at the recommendation of our elementary school principals. So basically, the change is parents or guardian will bring it in at the elementary school. We debated about the others, but we left it in the middle on how they're old enough and responsible enough to be able to remember that and to do what they should be doing, what they're supposed to. And again, in most of those cases, it goes right into the nurse's office, but we just wanted to close that loophole.
And again, that's on the action agenda. No, I'm sorry.
No, we'll do it like normal
Yeah.
in January. We'll just bring it back in case y'all want to look at it and have any changes made.
Okay. All right, November financial report. Ms. Moore.
Okay, you have the normal reports, and be happy to answer any questions. I can tell you that we're still waiting. We've passed the 45th day, and normally we get an update from the State Department on how our revenues are going to be for the rest of the year. We haven't gotten that yet. There's been weather problems and technology problems, and so we're still waiting for that update. So.
I have a question. There are two charges for the exact same amount for HAL Technology Solutions.
There were
That's
two.
only 9 days apart.
There were two invoices, and I looked at that too. I was like, did we pay that
Did we
twice?
split that
No,
PO?
no, we
That's
did
what I
not.
was concerned with.
No, we did not. It's
Okay.
two different schools.
Oh, okay. All right.
We had them do finish out a lot of the new wiring to get it done because with two folks it was going to take us forever. So.
Okay. What does it mean? Let's see, there was unspent, return of unspent funds at the state level.
We had a
state.
couple of three projects where we are allowed to carry over money from one year to the next, but after that second year, if you haven't spent the money from the first year, it has to go back. And we had a couple of situations where that happened.
That was $29,000 roughly.
I know that.
It was. And number one, I don't want to take away our responsibility to utilize money as
Wisely.
yes, wisely and as best we can. I will say in a couple of situations, we get money and we're so handcuffed as to how we can spend it. It has been difficult for some people to spend. One of those was counselor.
Yes, it's guidance counselor supply money.
And I mean, there's such specific categories. We do want to use it wisely, but at the same time, do we really want to, oh, well, let's just go do, I don't know. It's difficult.
True.
We probably should have done a little bit more homework.
If you're spending it on something that's authorized but not needed, then that's, you know, even though it's authorized by those funds, it's really not wise.
I don't want to be guilty of buying something and it sit in a closet or sit on a shelf somewhere. So again, not, you know, not making excuses. We probably should have done a little more homework and maybe done a little more exploring positive ways to spend the money. But at the same time, I don't want to be wasteful either. So Gloria called me about those as soon as she realized it, and we both just need to do a little better job staying on top of those funds and making sure that the appropriate people know exactly what's in those accounts and what it can be spent on. Yes.
Got one more.
Okay.
The current capital expenditure budget, reduced project costs due to maintenance department. That was, what did they do for us? That I like that. I like that.
Yeah, we were doing some upgrades at Fair Oak, and because the maintenance department could do some of that work as a part of their regular day, we were able to decrease that budget.
That was the problems we were having with the HVAC unit there. So what our guys did was went ahead of them, pulled the ceiling tile out and did all we could do. And then the company came in and did behind it. And what they thought was going to take 5 days, they got done in about 2.5 because our guys were going through and then cleaning up behind them. So it did work out well for us.
Well, maintenance pretty much does that all the time.
Sure.
They do.
They
do
try
an
anytime they can
excellent
take
job. Saves us a lot of
something to
money.
save us money, they try to do that.
And tell them we appreciate it.
I'll do that. Thank you for sharing that.
Good job.
Any other questions in this moment? Okay, in the action items, disposal of the iPad that was just discussed. Can I get a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the proposal of the administration to allow them to give Mr. Inabin the iPad that he originally had.
I'll second that.
Motion second. Questions or discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Policy IKADD, content and credit recovery. Ms. Simmons, you want to just do a quick briefing on
Yes, sir.
that we discussed last month, I think?
Towards the beginning of the school year, we had already approved the administrative rule. We just didn't have the policy that went along with it, so that's what we are approving for the second reading tonight. And it just basically gives a summary of what content recovery is and what credit recovery is. And then the administrative rule that you already had approved kind of goes into detail what we do as a district in those situations. So the policy just explains what those two options are.
Questions, Ms. Simmons?
On the credit recovery, you basically just get the credit. Your GPA stays exactly the same.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
You
just
either
want to make
get a
certain.
pass or a not pass.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to approve policy IKADD on second reading?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve a second reading policy IKADD, content and credit recovery.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor? That concludes the open portion of our meeting. We will return after executive session to take any action. And again, we appreciate your being here. Could I get a motion for executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations and changes, and an update on the property search for Seneca Middle School?
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that we go into executive session, personnel items, employment recommendation and changes, and the update on property search for Seneca Middle School.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion. All in favor? Thank you very much.